So for those of you who are watching this from up north, this is winter in Florida. Eat your hearts out. Oh, love this kind of winter in Florida. Taking another walk. Again, taking a walk from the gas station back over to the church. Had somebody need some help with gas, so we had that Good Samaritan Fund. So if you've come to the church and you've heard us talk about the Good Samaritan Fund, thank you so much if you've ever made a contribution to it. Because the fund is the one thing that allows me to help people with gas or help them with food or do something else, just like today. So thank you for that. So taking the walk back to the church on this beautiful sunny day here in Bradenton. He honked for me. Isn't that nice? He saw me taping, so he honked. And so just heading on back and just wanted to give you a review, a review of the day of what we talked about. Today was a special day over the church because it was the first Sunday that we had the Redemption Center worshiping over in our chapel. So they were using the chapel from 9:30 for their Bible study and 10:30 for their worship service, and we worship at 10 o'clock over the sanctuary. So the building is getting used, and that's a very good thing. Also, too, we're getting some rent. That's a very good thing, too. So that was today. That was a nice beginning for December to start with that group there in the chapel. Today we talked about questions and how we just, Advent and Christmas, many times we have questions, but I think sometimes we get taught not to ask questions. We get taught that, if we're asking questions, and that means we don't believe, and that's just not the case all the time. Many times we believe, but we just need some clarification, but we're afraid to ask questions. And so today we talked about asking questions. And we were going over the beginning of Luke's Gospel. We're going to be going through Luke's Gospel word for word for the Christmas story this year. And so we started with a Birth Foretold, the foretelling of the birth of John the Baptist. And so we read the story about Zechariah and how he couldn't speak because he didn't believe that he was going to be having a baby. And so the angel Gabriel said that you had to, now you couldn't speak until the baby was born. And so we went over that passage and how that understanding of the birth of Jesus doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in the context of a family, because Elizabeth is Mary's cousin, and Mary will end up visiting Elizabeth and talking with her about the birth of her baby. And so we had many different aspects of that we were talking about during the service, but I think the thing that we wanted to focus on the most was questions. Do you have any questions? Do you have any questions about God? Do you have any questions about Christmas? Do you have any questions about Jesus? Do you have any questions about church? There's nothing wrong with questions. In fact, questions are very healthy. The problem is that many times we don't ask questions because we don't feel that we're loved. We don't feel that we're loved enough to be able to ask the questions. It requires a special relationship to ask questions because we don't know what the answers are, and so we don't know if we're offended. We don't know if we're dealing in something that we should know, but we don't. We don't know how we're going to get treated. So love is a huge part of asking questions. If we don't feel loved, if we don't feel supported, if we don't feel as if the other person, in this situation God, the other person doesn't care for us, then we won't ask any questions. And this week the encouragement is for us to ask questions, for us to understand the love that God has for us. And then to ask the questions. Because we don't need to be afraid. We don't need to worry about whether God loves us or not. We don't need to worry about whether or not we're asking the right questions. What we need to focus on is we need to focus on God loving us so much that we can ask any question that we want. And again, some of us have been taught not to ask questions because that means that we doubt, or that means that we don't believe, or that means that we've got a problem in some way, shape, or form. And it's just not true. And Advent's a time of questions. Again, the GPS doesn't work unless we know where we're starting. You can't just program in a destination without telling the GPS where you're starting from. And asking our questions helps us to figure out where we're starting from. So this Christmas, feel free to ask questions. In fact, that was the invitation to everybody at church today. The invitation was for you to have the freedom to ask questions. And so we encourage you to have questions, and we hope that this is a question-filled Advent and Christmas time for you. For in the questions, you will find answers. And know that you can ask the questions, because this second Sunday of Advent is all about love. And God loves you so much that He's willing to answer your questions. Well, until we get together again, I hope that this week has a great you, and we'll see you soon. Next week, we're going to be worshiping at the UCC Church over on 26th Street West, joining with them for worship. So that's going to be interesting. So I'll give you an update. Tune in next week. If you're not able to join us, tune in next week for the update to see how that went. Alrighty, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.